Jim Ward, sorry. I'm Jim Ward. You have? I've heard your talking. I'm excited to be here. I don't want to get confused. One time I was there with her morning, I think, and after service. Okay, let me get out of here. Running over here.
To a what? A waterfall. But you never have enough water, in my case, in your life. Oregon and Washington are trying to prove it. Yeah, but I've seen some pictures in the hotel. As I look around at it, it's my I really like it. It's really, really nice. Username, yeah. Okay.
And I said, I'm going to be on today. Will you hold this? And he was like, there, got it. Well done. All right, okay. Wherever you want. Where you want to be. See what's going on. Yeah. And Jen and Albert from my stage. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, probably. Yes. You must be Jen. I'm Jen diagonally. I wanted to say hello and start you. Yeah, great.
I'm getting wired in. I love coming to the show. Please turn your lights on. This is the program. I won't have to really do that. Who wants to know that anyway? Maybe it's a little bit of both. We know
Would you fancy something from
we continue to
corporations are people too?
I would
I mean, I
maybe you wrap my mind around it.
I could turn into your own. You have to be able to take it into your
No, I like to tell people that. That's how I get my news. That's all John Stewart's people and I live in Jamaica.
And I'm
Japan?
alright. I'm gonna get Jason Trumbull to come back. Met Jason yet? He's your coach.
Okay. I'm familiar.
You guys have a
Nice to meet you.
Jim, this is Jason Trumbull.
Jason. Nice to meet you, sir.
Jim seems super high maintenance. He'll learn that very quickly. So I wanted him to know who you were.
You're the only guy I met so far with a tie, so I'm
Welcome to Ithaca. We got our son.
Well, I almost got a vision of that. But I thought about it. Well, every time I get close to it, every time I feels like
You get used to it. You find a way.
so I put my guy back, put my laptop.
Really one of us is trust. We got it.
I'm also. They talk about
Thanks, Jason.
not. Only because I'm on. No, I live outside of Portland, Oregon. So I came from the West Fall to the other coast. I check into the hotel and walk in the hall.
Good morning. I don't know why everyone got quiet. I didn't feel worried. People got quiet this time. What did we do differently this time? See? The lights we're on the side. For those of you who are new to Ithaca, this is just the time right now. So we're on time, just so you know. My name is Rudolph Brown. I have the honor and pleasure of serving as superintendent of schools here in this beautiful city. And this is our third opportunity to welcome some of the best thinkers in the country to the school district and to our city to have a conversation. So thank you for taking the time to spend a day with us. I know we have some people who helped make this possible in the room, and I want to say thank you. First and foremost, our Board of Education, who's done so much for me and my family, but the young people of our community. I know we have board members in the room. Mr. Rob Ainsley, our board president in the room, Brad Granger, Judy Maxwell, Pat Rosalie. If you can stand this way, please. Thank you for what you do. The hardest volunteer job I've ever seen, right there. But we also have some other folks in the room, and I want to say thank you for the folks who have made this possible. First, the folks from Imagine Learning. As a former CIO, I've worked with many vendors, and I've seen software come and software go. Folks know when we came into the district together, we did an audit of all software programs we have in our district, and we decided to get rid of a lot of stuff. We only have very few programs left. And it's because of the partnership we've been able to establish with folks who really care about young people. And their tools are making a difference as far as teaching and learning and achievement in classrooms. And Imagine Learning has done that for us. And quite frankly, you made it possible for us to have an outstanding professional development opportunity for our community and for the region this summer. So I know Darren Hill's in the room, the CEO, there are other folks in the room from Imagine Learning. I want to say thank you for helping us put on this conference today and all that you've done to help our young people in our school district. Thank you. Where are we going? It's informal here. Well, just wait. Come on, there you go. IPEI, thank you. I say all the time, everything we do is connected to the public education initiative. You've been outstanding partners for me, our district, our young people. Thank you for helping us put this event on again today. Folks from IPEI in the room, could you wave? I know you're here. There you go. You always sit together. And like I said, we have folks from all over. TC3, thank you so much for partnering. Cornell University, thank you so much for partnering and helping us put on this event today. We have folks, I think, from 8 different states, and folks registered late yesterday and last night, so I don't have your names up here. I apologize, but I believe we have 8 different states represented. Unfortunately, Virginia's not here this year, but we have new states coming to us. Utah's one. So we have to Virginia. I'm from Virginia, that's right. Virginia in the house, yeah. So I'll add that up later. So we have 8 different states in the house today. We also have school districts from all over New York State in the house today. I know we have folks in our region, Trumansburg, South Seneca's in the house. You can say something, not call your names out. I know Poughkeepsie's in the house today. Everyone take a lesson from Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie's in the house today. Greece is here, I think, also. There you go, Greece. There you go. So we have a lot of different folks from all over the state here to learn and grow with us. We're also live streaming this event. So folks, if you're at home, watching us, wherever, and however you're accessing this event, I hope that you're enjoying it. We've asked folks to engage in the conversation not only today, but throughout the year. That's what's happened the last few years as we've had this event. The conversation started here, but they continue throughout the year. And it's helped us transform the culture and what's happening in our classroom for our school district. So continue the conversation online using the hashtag ICSDPOC. But we start all of our conversations with this image. A mentor once said to me, everything you do should be on one page. And now we've translated that into one t-shirt. You may see some of these t-shirts now. We have our vision and our mission statement on a t-shirt. And I say to folks, we refer to it as a Wegmans moment. When you're in Wegmans, most of the folks in our community can speak to what we're going after as a school district and what we do. We're serious about thinking here, thinking in all that we do. And I'm not going to steal Derek's thunder because he's going to talk much about what we've done and what this means. But for all adults, all of our young people, 6,000 plus thinkers, this represents the thinking and problem solving, collaboration that we expect from thinkers in our community, and it's working for us. And how do we do that? The simplest mission statement, along with the simplest vision, from my perspective in the country, we engage, educate, and empower. It can mean different things to everyone, but for us, it's getting closer to meaning the same thing for all. And I'm seeing it happening in my classroom, and young people are starting to understand what it means to be engaged, educated, and empowered in 2014. And it's working for us. I wish I had time to talk about our achievement numbers, maybe another time, but we're seeing significant, unprecedented achievement gains in our school district because of our vision and mission and our common minimum around the work. We're excited about you being here to help us continuously improve. Oh, let me go back to that. Learning target. Oh, wow, this thing is doing this somewhere. The learning target for today. Again, we use learning targets in our classrooms. It's going to be hard to have a classroom of 200, 250 folks today, but we still will have a learning target. So today, think about this learning target. We hope everyone has a chance to access what's happening here today, virtually or in person, in a way that will affect your practice. The things I hate to do, logistics. So Jenny, I hope you knew about. I'm going to try to get it all right. There is a conference app, and in that conference app, there's an agenda. There's information about the speakers. There's other information in the conference app. If you're having trouble downloading the app, or you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, or if you're like someone I know in the back without a phone or a device, we have print copies for you also. But there's a conference app, and thank you Apparently for being here and offering this app up for us for free. If you have questions about how to get it and how to access it, you can check with them. Hope I get this right there. Everyone must sign into my learning plan if you're coming up, not everyone. If you registered through my learning plan, you need to sign in. And all ICSD folks need to make sure you sign in at some point today so you get credit for being here. Lunch will be in the Ithaca High School cafeteria, and there are probably 400 signs that will lead you right to that. All those signs, so there's signs for lunch and where that will be, and it will be served by our food service department, which is the best food service department. Anyway. Quickly, thank you, Magdalene, and we have the best documentarian in the world in the house today. I want to, Josh Clark, can you wave? Josh has worked with folks such as Steven Spielberg, and I won't go on and on, but he's worked in Hollywood. Unfortunately, he's on staff with the Magdalene, and he is working on a project. He's wanted to tell the Ithaca story of sorts. I had a chance to spend 3 days with him. He was on site for 3 days, and he captured a lot of footage. And he and we are attempting to tell a story about some of the work that's happening in our school district. We're going to show a rough cut, a beta version of that film today, around 12:45, around the lunchtime hour, if you wish to see it. Not a finished product, just one aspect of the story that's been told here in Ithaca. If you want to take a look at it, it's 25 minutes long or so. I think we roll out some food to come into the cafeteria if you wish, into the auditorium if you wish to come in and check that out. But that will happen today at 12:45. A book signing. I know Cheryl, I hope Cheryl's here. Cheryl Dobbin here right now? Cheryl is going to be here later. She's going to speak. She has a great book out. Her book is going to be here for sale, I believe, and she's going to be here to sign a copy of that book. Derek and Laura Cabrera here. They've written 7 books. Now, I think some people came in with the book and they wish to have that book signed, and they'll be out in the lobby as well. I was fortunate to have an opportunity to co-author a book with Derek and Laura, Think Tweets, 100 Tweets for Educators, and it really is our thinking, our brain dump of tweet. It starts with the tweet and it ends with the tweet. And there's a place for people to add a tweet. But we are attempting to get a conversation started about thinking. So it's a cool little book. We have a copy for everyone in the room. It's yours. We'll have it outside on a table, Jenny, for everyone to pick up. I'm not saying you necessarily have to get us signed, but we will sign it if you wish to have us sign it. But a copy, I would love for the conversation again to continue. And here is one way to get the conversation started. Got a call from the superintendent in Vancouver, Washington last week, who's using this book for his summer PD. And he's using it for his administrative retreats. And they're starting every meeting in their district with a tweet from the book, a way to get the conversation started and get folks to think. So again, that would be one. We have a copy for everyone out there. For free, pick it up, and we would love to sign it if you wish for us to do so. How much time, okay? If you haven't noticed yet, Jenny is the person who manages everything in our life. I don't get dressed in them without asking Jenny what to wear. But Jenny is awesome. So, unfortunately, Sir Ken won't be here today. A lot of us are looking forward to having him with us this summer. You can watch his TED Talk online, like 300 million other folks have watched it. But he was hoping to come share some unique thinking and where his thinking is right now. Last night he sent me a video that he wanted me to share with the folks in the room because he wasn't able to be here because of some health concerns. And I thought, if okay, we can take 5 or 6 minutes to show his thinking and what he wanted to share with you.
So Ken Robinson here, and it's my pleasure to say a few words at the beginning of today's conference. I have to begin with an apology to the organisers of the conference, to Dr. Brown, and to all of you who've come along today. I had planned to be, had agreed to be, fully intended to be with you all day today at the conference, and I've been really looking forward to it. I wanted to learn more about what's happening in Ithaca, I wanted to hear the speakers, and I wanted to be part of today's conversations. These are for purely personal reasons. I'm simply not able to travel at the moment, and therefore not able to be with you. And I wasn't able to let the conference organisers know until really a very short notice on Friday, and they've been absolutely heroic and wonderful and very understanding. And I know it's left a little problem for today, and I want to at least make you aware that the problems originated with me and not with them. That said, I do want to wish you well for today's conversations, and I'm hoping very much I can be part of a future conference in Ithaca. I was going to tell you about the book I'm working on, so I would like just to advertise it if I could briefly to you. Now, I'm often asked about the practical implications of the arguments I'm making for more creative approaches to education, to the revolutionising of schools. And somebody said to me recently that they were very interested in my theories. And my reply to that is that they're not theories. I'm really just arguing for what seems to me to be practical common sense. It's what I know works. I've been in education a very long time, and I work a lot with schools, with teachers, with young people, and I'm very conscious of the conditions under which people do their best and under which they flourish, and the ones that make them wilt and make them feel stifled. You know, a lot of the things I've been saying, of course, have been heavily publicised through the success of the TED Talks I've done. And I was at an event recently in the Midwest at a university. I was there to speak to the students, and we had a lunch with some of the faculty beforehand. And one of them said to me, you know, you've been at this a long time now, haven't you? I said, what's that? I said, you know, promoting change in education. I said, yes, I have. And he said, what is it? 8 years now? I said, how do you mean 8 years? He said, well, you know, since that TED Talk. And I said, well, yes, you know, but I was alive before that. I was invited to speak at TED because of the work I'd done in this sort of field. And I have to say, the things I argued for are not of my origination. I mean, I've been arguing for ideas and principles and processes in education. I've tried to explain them as clearly as I can. I've tried to champion them. But the principles themselves go back a very long way. They root back to the very beginning of formal education. And they underpin some of the most successful styles and methods of teaching that we've ever seen. So I'm not making new claims, I'm not making theoretical claims. I try to theorise about them. I try to explain why these things matter. But it seems to me axiomatic that they do. Well, what I'm talking about are forms of education that respect the individual's talents, the importance of engaging children at a personal level, that recognise the diversity of talent and intelligence and ability, that recognises also the diversity of occupations and sorts of lives that people will lead once they go beyond education. And a big part of my argument is that our education system is essentially modelled on industrial processes. And this is really what's at the heart of this new book. And I just want to say a couple of words about it. One of them is this, that when I talk about the industrialisation of education, it's a metaphor. I'm not actually suggesting that kids are put into moulds and pressed and pushed out the fire on the conveyor. I'm saying that the processes bear a lot of similarities to industrialisation because they arose in the context of industrialisation. But you know, there's actually a more exact metaphor here, which is not with the industrial manufacture of inanimate goods, it's with industrial farming, which developed at the same time as the industrialisation of the manufacture of goods and products. Industrial farming was made possible by various innovations, the mechanisation of the processing of crops, the development of mechanised tractors, threshing machines and so on. It was also made possible in the production of crops by the development of artificial fertilisers, which forced plants to go at a much faster rate than they would otherwise. And because these great farms that grew under industrialisation were largely single crop facilities, it also required the development of industrial pesticides to keep these crops from becoming infected and from decaying because of the lack of natural ecosystems. So those three things have contributed to the industrialisation of food production and of animal production. But here's the thing, they are not sustainable. They've led to all kinds of problems in the natural environment from runoff of these chemicals. The indications are that we may be reaching the end of the impact of some of these processes, and in the process, they've led to the deterioration of topsoils and the pollution of waterways. The thing is, as well about this is that these industrial processes are focused on output, on size, and on the productivity of plants. Organic farming is quite different. It's based on creating conditions for natural growth. And organic farming still has high levels of output, but it's not focused on the plant, it's focused on the soil. If you get the soil right, the plants will go anyhow. In other words, organic farming is focused on the culture part of agriculture. Well, I think education is like that. Our education system has become very preoccupied with output, with data, and along the way we've produced these rather sterile environments. Not in every school, there are fantastic schools. I'm sure there are very many great schools in Ithaca, which we'll be learning about today. But the dominant cultural standardisation of data-driven outputs has led to a sterility in the culture of education. And what I'm arguing for is that we should be supporting schools and teachers who recognise that the vitality of schools depends on the culture of the school itself, and on diversity, on innovation, creativity, and on the artistry of teaching. If we don't get it right at the ground level, then it will never be right. We can't will these things into being by pressing for more and more data-driven outputs, which inhibit the growth we're looking for. So that's the essence of what my new book's about, and it's also trying to set out what the practical strategies are that will bring us there, and it's based on a lot of case studies of schools around the world, not only in America, but in Europe and in Asia as well. You see, I would tell you what the title of the book is, but I've learned a lesson here. When I spoke at the first TED conference, my first TED conference in 2006, I said I was working on a new book called Epiphany. Well, it was at the time called Epiphany. The thing is, we changed the title afterwards to The Element, by finding your passion changes everything. But it was too late then, in terms of the TED Talk, to go back and re-edit it. So that talk, which has been seen by, we think, maybe 300 million people around the world, has done wonders for the sales of books called Epiphany. So I could tell you the title of this new book, but I'm not going to. All you can do is keep your eye open for it, and if you invite me back next year, as I hope you will, then I'll show you the title printed on the cover. In the meantime, my renewed apologies to Dr. Brown, to the other speakers today, to the organisers of the conference, for not being with you in person, and my renewed good wishes for what I know will in any case be a fantastic day. I wish I were there with you, but I know it's going to be just as good without me, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes and seeing you at some future date.
Well, again, you haven't had a chance to follow Sir Ken on Twitter, please do so. Tweet at him today and tell him he should be here. But he is very active on Twitter. He tweets 3 or 4 times a day. He hasn't been doing so much appeal lately for other reasons, but please check him out on Twitter. Again, we do hope to get him here in the near future. Hopefully next summer he'll have a chance to to engage and participate in the conversation. Again, you have an app or you have a device, I hope. Check out the lineup of speakers today and check out their bios. Some very accomplished folks are going to be here to share and inspire us. As I introduce folks, I won't go into their long bios because I won't have time, but please check out what they've done. They're very impressive folks. And to start it off, we're going to have a gentleman, and again, you can read all about what he's done. He has a couple of TED Talks out there as well you may want to check out. But what I would say about Derek is every time I have a chance, and he was introduced to me 3 years, we were introduced 3 years ago, and every time I've had a chance to be in the room with him, I learned something. From my perspective, the ultimate compliment for an educator. Every time you're in a room with an educator, you want to learn something. And he is that good. He's helped us think about the work in ways that I had never thought about it, and others hadn't thought about it. But he's helping other districts do so. I've had other superintendents say to me that the work of Lark and Derek Cabrera is helping them transform their school districts. So we have extended time with Derek today, and Jim, and I know you're going to be inspired by their words and their thinking. And with that, I'll welcome Mr. Derek Cabrera, Dr. Derek Cabrera to the stage. Thank you, Derek.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm going to move this. As you may have noticed, I am not Sir Ken Robinson. I'm sure you won't, I'm sorry that you won't be able to hear Sir Ken today, although you heard him on video, but I'm sure you join me in wishing him and his family well. I was scheduled to speak after Sir Ken and was asked to take on the difficult job of speaking in his stead when we heard news of his emergency. I know how excited you were to see him, so I hope I won't be the source of utter disappointment. But in my defense, what I have to say is far more interesting than what he was going to say. What I'd like to talk about is the need for a particular type of thinker in the world called meta-thinkers, or what scientists call metacognitive thinkers. Meta-thinkers are people who have an awareness of how they think and maintain that awareness when they're thinking about anything and everything. Meta-thinking isn't a new idea. It's what Buddhists and leftists call consciousness or self-awareness. What is new is that scientists have recently discovered new things about how we can be more metacognitive, how teachable and learnable it is, and the noteworthy outcomes that can result. Now, about this conference's theme, E3. I hope you leave today having learned that E3 is more than a catchy logo or a memorable catchphrase for this conference. E3 is a deep and meaningful construct that is the basis for revolutionary changes in education, most notably the purposeful development of meta-thinking from student to superintendent. But first, why do we need meta-thinkers? You may have heard that Einstein said we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. That's really the epitome of meta-thinking, because most of the problems we face in our lives or globally in the world are problems of our own thinking. We created them with a particular mindset, and to solve them, we'll need to unseat that mindset and entertain a new one. A hard truth we must face is that our biggest problems result from a mismatch between the way the world works and how we think. Let's take a look at how we get ourselves into trouble when we don't do enough meta-thinking with a few examples. Here's a recipe for disaster near you, brought to you by the lack of meta-thinking. Ultra-smart, entitled, amoral Wall Street traders with little care or consciousness of the global effects of their selfish actions, an utter disregard for others, and a gift for self-indulgent justification, find a loophole in the law and drive a truck through it. Unconscious but otherwise upstanding citizens with just the right amount of gullibility convince themselves that too good to be true might just be true, and take loans that far outpace their earnings. Foreclosures are rampant, markets crash, recessions ensue, and Iceland goes bankrupt. Political leaders motivated by fear and favoritism concoct an idea that some banks are simply just too big to fail, and then double down by failing to prosecute the individuals behind the banks, instead giving them the job of fixing the problem they created. Here's another disaster that's already in production, and we're all a part of it. Martin Glaser, the author of Missing Microbes, explains that antibiotic use is rising in astronomical proportions, especially in children. In particular, parents who do not question their own assumptions and who dearly want to protect their children are giving antibiotics at a rate of 1,000 courses per 1,300 babies a year. An average children receive 17 doses of antibiotics before they're just 20 years old. The downstream effects of this behavior are extremely dangerous because the bacteria these young people are carrying become resistant to antibiotics. Blazer says, a cold becomes an untreatable pneumonia, a knee injury becomes MRSA, and people die. According to the CDC, the #1 health threat to us this year is antibiotic resistance and coping with untreatable infections affecting 2 million people in this year in the US alone. And of course, there are other countless classic examples of the lack of meta-thinking that never get old. This one is about a solution that led to big problems literally downstream. Pests were killing crops and decreasing production yields in industrial farms across America. The solution is to employ pesticide sprays that include nitrates as the active ingredient. Hundreds of millions of tons of nitrates seeped into the groundwater and then into streams, river basins, and eventually into the Mississippi, making its way down to the Delta, where the nitrates interact with the sun to create a toxic dead zone in one of the world's largest shrimp and crab fisheries. This caused shrimpers to take their boats out farther to sea to find the catch that they used to find on shore. This required more boat fuel, which had gone up in price due to the consequences of a war in the Gulf. The cost of dinner at Red Lobster just got more expensive. Meanwhile, bees, who pollinate plants and increase crop yields, are now dying off in droves, likely to because of the pesticides that were designed to increase crop yields. The next example is a little bit closer to home. I was in Dick's Sporting Goods the other day and saw a mother and a boy around 8 years old waiting in the line at the checkout counter. At the end of the counter was a beverage fridge designed to manipulate the less metacognitive shoppers to buy a refreshing drink while they waited in line. The overweight boy begged his mother for a Pepsi, and I could see the mom think and then explain to the boy that it was early and that the Pepsi was full of sugar and chemicals. The boy was saddened that he couldn't have what PepsiCo and Dick's wanted him to want. Then the boy came up with an alternative based on his mother's concerns. He said, "Okay, can I have a Gatorade?" To which his mother said yes. Gatorade is only a fraction healthier than Pepsi, and there was water in the same cooler, bottled of course. Metacognition isn't just for individuals. Organizations can use metacognition too. Because if you think about it, if this child becomes obese over his lifetime, the amount of sports equipment he needs will decline proportionally. And Dick's might have just sold themselves out of a customer for life by not thinking it through. The need for metacognitive awareness is as pedestrian as it gets. Our everyday lives, and in particular the lives of our children, involve navigating a gauntlet of manipulative tactics from social media, advertising, and product campaigns. The only inoculation against this series of manipulations is metacognition. Look at the many manipulations you will find at your local supermarket, all designed to influence your choices and maximize profits. There's the right side entry of the store to encourage more spending through counterclockwise shopping, researched and approved. Fruits and vegetables up front to give a healthy vibe. Shelf space and end caps available to the highest bidders so that you naturally notice the most expensive items at eye level. And essential and common items like milk and eggs at the back of the store, placed there not for your convenience, but designed to manipulate you to buy more than what you came to buy. Who knew that a harmless errand to the grocery store could be so full of manipulations, swindlers, and schemers? But our kids won't be inoculated against these swindlers. They won't learn to think for themselves, and they won't be empowered to solve our most pressing problems if we spend most of our time knowing in front of them instead of getting them to build knowledge in front of us. if we spend our time telling them what to think instead of teaching them how to think. If we spend our time teaching subjects and not enough time teaching humans. And if we spend too much time preparing them to do well in school and on tests, and not enough time developing the whole person through thinking and preparing them for life. And here's why. That, a very small number, is the number of top 10 jobs in the year 2013 that existed just 6 years earlier in 2007. We are arming our children with knowledge that's already out of date to get a future job that doesn't exist today, use technology that hasn't yet been invented, and solve unpredictable problems in a world we can only imagine. We cannot predict where life's journey will take our children. But if we prepare them to think, they will thrive. So the question is, how do we teach meta-thinking? I'll tell you, in the 10 years of working in the trenches with teachers in schools, preceded by 15 years of working in the trenches as an educator myself, I can honestly say that I've never met anyone who disagrees that it would be nice to have a society full of thinking people, and that schools, in concert with families and communities, are the place to make it so. And while everyone agrees that we should teach thinking, there are a lot of people who don't know how to teach thinking. There are also some others who have strange ideas about how to do it. The most popular of this latter bunch is the Let's Teach a Critical Thinking course sophomore year crowd. Of course, that's too late and too short. Thinking isn't something we teach once or twice and hope they get it. Thinking is something we do in order to make meaning. Yet I've also met a lot of people who believe or hope or pray that thinking will just occur as a byproduct of teaching subject matter. Of course, it doesn't, any more than thorough knowledge of the Battle of Saratoga will occur as a byproduct of not teaching it explicitly. Funny story. I was in a classroom not too long ago, and a little boy in the 5th grade said to his teacher, he raised his hand, he said, "Miss Thompson, you keep asking me to think about it. And I have no idea what you mean by that. What do you want me to do?" This little boy's question sums up the problem. We're not explicit about what it means to think. We behave as if it just happens, and that kids just do it. And the result is that a lot of kids think of their brain in much the same way that they think of their heart, an organ. It has a job to do, and it does it. No intervention necessary. When we teach them that their mind is something that could be self-directed and understood, it's often an epiphany for them. We also act as if there is some optimal time to get kids learning how to think. In truth, it's always an opportune time developmentally for the child. It starts when they're born, and it ends never. We focus much on the K-12 process on teaching kids what to think, and we need also to spend time teaching kids how to think. And we can teach how to think through what they're learning. Not in addition to the content, but as a way to get deep understanding of the subject matter that they're learning. What we must do is use the subject matter we're teaching as a guide, as a medium for teaching thinking. So, we are teaching thinking all the time, through the subject matter, not separate from it. This approach will foster a deep understanding of both what kids need to learn and the process of how they learn. The truth is that we know exactly how to teach kids to be metacognitive. All we need is the will to do so. We know that the human mind uses just 4 patterns of thinking to transform lifeless information into meaningful knowledge. These 4 patterns of thinking are already occurring in every moment in our classrooms, and all we need to do is point out that they're happening, so we can make the thinking that is going on explicit. These are the 4 patterns of thinking that combine together at lightning speed in the human mind to transform information about any topic or subject into meaning. Making these patterns known to your students helps them to slow down their mind and watch it as if it were in slow motion. We make distinctions between things and other things by creating a boundary between identity and other. We systematize things into groups or sorts or categories by putting parts and wholes together. We make action-reaction relationships between and among ideas and systems of ideas. And we take perspectives on things, establishing both a point and a view. We make distinctions, systems, relationships, and perspectives, or what a lot of people call DSRP, not as separate acts, but as integral. One cannot occur without the others, and they are simultaneously occurring. Here are a few examples that capture these four patterns of meta-thinking. You'll all recognize the I'm a Mac commercials. The gist of this fun and effective campaign is to make a distinction between the aesthetically beautiful, simple-to-use Mac and the stodgy, out-of-date PC. Making distinctions are a universal thing that's happening throughout the day in our classrooms. Distinguishing between PC and Mac is no different than distinguishing between the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, between mathematical expressions and equations, or between the colors of the rainbow. Becoming aware that we're making distinctions makes us conscious of how we draw or define the boundaries of an idea or a system of ideas. Whenever we draw a boundary to define something, that same boundary defines what is not that thing or the other. Any boundary we make is a distinction between two fundamentally important elements: the identity or the thing, and the other stuff that's not the thing. When we understand that all thoughts are comprised of distinct boundaries, we become aware that we focus on one thing at the expense of focusing on another. Distinction making allows us to simplify our thinking, but it also introduces biases that may go unchecked if you're unaware. It is distinction making that allows us to pass a cup of coffee when asked, but it's also distinction making that creates us and them dichotomies that lead to the closed-mindedness, or worse, alienation, bullying, and violence. Distinctions are a part of every thought act and every speech act, and we do not form words without having formed distinctions first. The second pattern of metacognition that's happening all the time in your classroom is part-whole thinking. Your students constantly construct and deconstruct ideas by breaking things down into parts or creating new wholes. When a student realizes that the only difference between an expression and an equation is an equal sign, that's part-whole thinking. When a student breaks down the major issues of a historical event to better understand it, and then selects a few of these parts to present a summary of his findings, that's part-whole thinking. When a small child takes apart classroom routines to learn what it means to be a part of a community, that's part-whole thinking. It's often said that there are two types of thinkers: splitters and lumpers. Those who split stuff apart, and synthesizers who lump things together. We need to teach all children to become splumpers. When we become aware that our mind is always breaking things down into parts and splumping them into whole systems, we realize that any topic, subject, or situation is better understood by breaking it down or putting it back together again. Every book contains chapters containing paragraphs that contain sentences, that contain words with letters made up of ink strokes, which are comprised of pixels made up of atoms. To construct or deconstruct meaning is to organize different ideas into part-whole configurations. A change in the way the ideas are organized leads to a change of the meaning itself. Every system can become a part of some larger system. The process of thinking about things means that we must draw a distinction where we stop zooming in and when we stop zooming out. The act of thinking is defined by splitting things up or lumping ideas together, and nothing exists in isolation, but in systems of context. We can study the parts separated from the whole, or we can generalize the whole from the parts. But in order to gain understanding of any system, we must do both in the end. Of course, once we break down things into parts, we need to think about how those parts are related to each other. And that's the third pattern of meta thinking. Relationships are often hidden. So we need to teach kids to look for them and to make them explicit. For example, when I type the phrase lobster dog into Google, the relationship is actually invisible. It's hidden in the white space between the two words. But you'd be surprised just how many people have dressed their dogs up as a lobster. Thousands and thousands of photos. This is a silly example of relationships. But remember that your kids are already making connections all the time. Your job is to help them realize that it's a powerful metacognitive skill that helps them understand things in all subjects. We cannot understand much about anything or idea or systems of things without understanding the relationships between and among them. So it's critical that students become conscious of the fact that understanding anything involves understanding its relationships. There are many important types of relationships: causal, correlative, feedback, inputs and outputs, influence, direct and indirect. And there are relationships at every level of scale, between atoms, molecules, cells, neurons, between humans and groups of humans, even between countries, and even between planets and galaxies. At the most fundamental level, though, all relationships require that we consider two underlying elements: action and reaction, or the correlating effects of two or more things. Gaining an awareness of the number of interrelationships around us forms an ecological ethos that connects us in an infinite network of interactions. Action-reaction relationships are not merely important to the understanding of physical systems, but are essential metacognitive trait for understanding human social systems and the essential interplay between the three parts of the mind: our thoughts, our feelings, and our motivations, or what scientists call cognition, emotion, and conation. The other day, I was reading a news article. It turns out that turtle crime is on the rise. A few days ago, a snail was mugged by two turtles. When the police arrived, they asked the snail what happened. The snail said, "I don't know. It all happened so fast." You laugh. But did you know that in the split second it took you to see the humor in that joke, you unconsciously took three different perspectives? You did. The joke isn't funny unless you distinguish between a human concept of speed, a turtle's concept of speed, and a snail's concept of speed. So everything your students think about history, about math, English, art, music, sports, themselves and their friends is framed by perspectives. When we make distinctions, when we group or sort things into part-whole structures, or when we draw relationships between ideas, we are always doing so from a particular perspective. So becoming aware of perspectives makes us more metacognitive and conscious of what our minds are thinking. Sometimes these perspectives are so basic and so unconscious we don't even see them, like in the joke I just told. But they're always there. If we think about perspectives in a fundamental way, we can see that they're made up of two relating elements: a point from which we are viewing and the thing or systems of things in the view. That's why perspectives are synonymous with a point of view. Awareness of the value of taking perspective and being aware of the perspectives one takes, and equally important, the ones that we don't take, is paramount in deeply understanding oneself and the world around us. There is a saying that if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When we shift perspective, we also transform the distinctions, the relationships, and the systems that we see and do not see. These four metacognitive skills might seem pretty simple, but when students learn them, they become aware of how they think. It's as if they are being introduced to their minds for the very first time, and a number of remarkable outcomes occur. They don't just learn the four skills. They actually develop skill sets in 8 other areas: They'll become creative thinkers who are inventive and insightful and imaginative, able to create new ideas, innovations, inventions, and energy. They'll become critical thinkers who think analytically, identify biases and see flaws in logic, and ask intelligent questions to seek deeper understanding. They'll become emotionally intelligent, people who are aware of their mental models, their emotions, and their motivations, have empathy and compassion for self and others, and possess grit, perseverance, and tenacity in pursuit. They'll also become pro-social thinkers who recognize themselves as citizens of a larger community by considering others and developing effective communication and deep listening skills. They develop academically into successful students by becoming knowledge-able through building ideas rather than memorizing facts and becoming simply information-full. They become actually design thinkers. What this means is that they can build things or ideas or processes based on their essential form and function and develop the most appropriate solution under existing constraints. And they become scientific thinkers who can think independently, acknowledge their biases, be open-minded, and seek evidence to support their theories about reality. And finally, they become systems thinkers who see the wider context of a situation to avoid unintended outcomes and consequences. All of these forms of thinking, which we all want for our children, are the outcomes of teaching the 4 patterns of meta-thinking, and they are the essence of what it means to develop the whole child, or to teach humans, not subjects. Meta-thinking alone can transform your school or district if you follow what successful districts have discovered through their implementation. Let me share a few of those insights from the districts and schools we've had the delight to work with over the last decade. I'll tell you a little story. 10 years ago, Laura and I were concerned that our Ivy League students could do school but lacked basic meta-thinking skills like problem-solving, creativity, emotional intelligence, and grit. We decided to take our research on metacognition out of the tower and into the trenches. We started doing talks around the country to anyone who would listen, and those talks really hit a nerve. Our concern about our students was shared among businesses, educational and political leaders, and parents, teachers, and students. Energized by this overwhelming response, we embarked on an audacious vision and mission to engage, educate, and empower 7 billion thinkers. Our vision mission was for our research lab to keep us focused and on track, and on a daily basis to build the culture of our lab. But a year later, a principal named Christina Dickens from Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia approached me, and she had a kind of a novel request. She said, "Can we adopt your vision mission?" Chris wanted to use our lab's vision mission and culture building strategies for her entire school, to train her teachers and to transform her school into what she called a think school. I said sure, without realizing that this would lead to an E3 thinking revolution in education. Today, districts, schools, and teachers across the United States are adopting our vision mission as their own. Like Chris's school is committed to engaging, educating, and empowering the thinkers the world needs, many other districts, principals, and individual teachers have taken responsibility for developing thinkers in their community with significant qualitative and quantitative results. In 2012, ICSD began training teachers to develop meta-thinking skills in students across the district, and Dr. Brown and the ICSD board adopted our vision mission to engage, educate, and empower 6,000 thinkers. Since then, the graduation rate has climbed to 90% from 78%, and students were above state and national averages on standardized test scores. The qualitative effects on students and teachers are even more pronounced. So there are districts all over the country, ranging from 250,000 students and teachers to 600 thinkers as their vision, all of which are helping to engage, educate, and empower thinkers. And there are tens of thousands of independent teachers who have also counted themselves and their students into this vision mission, From 1 to 100 thinkers, it all starts to add up. And today, I'm happy to say that we have reached close to 1 million thinkers and counting, which is a long way from 7 billion, so we have a lot of work to do. So there is a universal vision and mission that resonates for any district or school or teacher. What Chris Dickens did, and what many other districts today are doing, including right here at ICST, is to adopt this vision and mission. The vision keeps your district focused on what matters and transforming students into meta-thinkers. The mission tells each person in the organization the simple things that need to be done every day in every student interaction over and over again to accomplish the vision. Our most successful district leaders enculturate their vision mission throughout so that everything that goes on in the district is focused and aligned to vision and mission. That means that the district initiatives are all framed by the vision and mission and that everyone in the district is on the same page. Let me give you a few examples of how ICSD here and others have done it. They're working hard to ensure that their 4 cultural initiatives are completely aligned with vision mission for developing thinkers. They have 4 cultural initiatives, and each of them is getting in alignment. The first initiative is that metrics that matter. To change a district for the better, we need to think of tests and grades as the low bar, and deep understanding, transfer, and metacognition and whole person development as the high bar. The second initiative is a professional learning network, or PLN, that establishes a community of leadership, staff, teachers, parents, and community members and students to learn more about the district's audacious vision and mission and cultural initiatives, and to learn and share best practices, methods, techniques, technologies that make it possible, including things like this conference and other trainings and things like that. The third initiative involves curriculum design. The curriculum design process, learning modules, and daily lessons must reflect a commitment to the district's vision and mission. Districts have worked to align curriculum and learning experiences that transform students into well-rounded thinking citizens. And that all starts with what they teach and how they teach it. And the fourth initiative is kind of a think culture campaign, which is making thinking the topic of discussion across the district, including students and teachers and community, in the same way that we used to see posters that said reading is fundamental, or campaigns. Successful districts have launched think campaigns to remind everyone that thinking is fundamental to what they're doing. Culture is the most powerful leverage for change available to any organization. Many leaders and leadership training programs get this wrong, thinking that top-down strategic planning is what matters most. But while it takes a little longer to build, it lasts a lifetime and is built from the ground up, not top down. Culture can be built purposefully because culture is simply the sharing of mental models. The primary thing that a culture must share is the same vision and mission. And leaders that have had success understood that the vision and the mission are not statements in a frame on the wall, but must be shared mental models in the hearts and minds of everyone in the district and the community. A great example of these efforts is the Think District pages that superintendents and principals can create that help the entire community better understand and engage with the transformational change that is underway. Visitors to the page can learn about the vision and mission and the research behind meta-thinking. They can learn about major cultural initiatives the district has and how they're driven by the vision and mission. And they can keep learning together as a district by hearing about what we call wow stories, all of which are getting at, seeing things in the classrooms that are happening and then showing them to everybody in the district so that we can sort of collectively learn from each other. All of these resources and teachers for students and parents and board members and community members need to spread the word and build the culture and alignment across the organization. And there's near total transparency, which has a lot of benefits. Similarly, teachers are creating their own Think Classroom pages where they get to claim their part of the vision. You can see Mrs. Smith's classroom has 120 thinkers that she's responsible for. And they have separate cultural initiatives in their classroom with students, parents, and colleagues. The effect is that while everyone is aligned across the district, they are also laser focused on what they need to do in their little part of the pond. So these principles of vision, mission, and culture are readily applied in the classroom as well. Teachers are transparent with their students about the vision and mission and use 7 important culture change initiatives to transform their classroom into a think classroom. At its core, to engage means to get me thinking. It means authentic student engagement. This can be best understood by making a distinction between authentic engagement and its counterparts, strategic and ritual compliance, rebellion, and retreatism. Thinking lies at the root of authentic engagement. We know that students build knowledge by thinking or creating meaning about information, and that thinking acts upon information and causes students to build knowledge, and is also the root action of true engagement. Engagement simply means that students are thinking about the topic of the lesson. We often think that the best way to engage a student is to make it fun. But think about your own patterns of engagement. You're often most engaged when your mind is engaged, interested, and especially not bored. Sometimes it's fun, but sometimes it's not. And fun can be engaging, but thinking is always engaging. We also think that the A students are engaged and F students are not. That is not always true. I know, because I was an F student. It's not as simple as A students are engaged and F students are not. And here's why. Authentic engagement is very different than strategic compliance. Strategic or ritual compliance is a form of faux engagement, where learners are engaged in some of the extrinsic or intrinsically motivated things. For example, they may be motivated by grades or choose strategies to maximize their grade that simultaneously lessen their learning. As is often the case, it is quite possible that our top students are not authentically engaged, but are instead strategically compliant. They have learned how to do school, but are not developing a deep understanding of the topics of study. These compliance behaviors can be redirected toward authentic engagement by engaging kids through their thinking about the topic at hand. Strategically compliant students are thinking about how to game the system to get the grade, whereas authentically engaged students are thinking about their learning. Rebellion is a form of misdirected faux engagement as well. Rather than punishing or controlling rebellious behavior, we should redirect its energy towards authentic engagement. Rebellion is often seen as disengagement, but it is actually a sign of desire to engage, coupled with the need for help of how to do it. And retreatist behavior is of the greatest concern, because a student has given up or shut down or disengaged entirely. It's the opposite of engagement and should be taken seriously and requires intervention and concerted effort to connect with the student. The existence of any of these behaviors, compliance, rebellion, or retreatism, is an important feedback mechanism we must attend to because it indicates that something about the school or classroom culture is disincentivizing authentic engagement. So engagement, when we say engage, it really is synonymous with get me thinking. The second part of the mission is to educate. Again, we have to move beyond the dictionary definition and build a deeper shared common model of what it means to educate. The most frequent definition is simply to teach someone such that learning occurs. So to understand educate, we must define learning. And learning is commonly thought of as the acquisition of or change in knowledge. And as mentioned above, students build knowledge by giving meaning to information, by structuring it through the process of thinking. Sorry, I have massive ADD, and I get distracted by the noise. There's a little noise in the audience. So note that all students are making distinctions and part-whole systems and relationships and taking multiple points of view and perspectives to build meaning of content. Our commitment to learning is exemplified by an important or fundamental question of teaching and learning. How are my learners building their ideas? Of equal importance is the recognition that learners can get information, but they cannot get knowledge. They must build it through the process of thinking. So we need to teach them how to think while they're learning information. Effective education employs multiple techniques and classroom tools that engage all of their senses, visual, tactile, kinesthetic, to engage and educate them through their thinking processes. The third and final part of the mission is to empower. To engage is to think, and to educate is to get students building and grounding ideas. To empower is simply to transfer, over time, the role of the teacher to the student. Thus, if the student has the capacity to play the role of teacher to themselves, they become a lifelong learner. The student becomes the master of their own learning. Empowerment is fundamentally metacognitive, because if the student understands how they build knowledge to make it meaningful, they can teach themselves anything. That's empowerment in a nutshell. Society needs meta-thinkers, and as educators, it's our job to create these thinkers. If we allow ourselves to get distracted by all the noise of bureaucracies and politics, if we allow ourselves to make it more complicated than it really is, then we allow ourselves to get distracted from the one thing we have control over, the moment when we get to do the best job in the world, to develop young people into whatever they can be. On the other hand, if we stay laser focused on our vision to develop young people into thinkers, and understand that 3 simple things done by many can lead to big, big changes, we will see our schools transform much faster than we ever expected. Engage, get me thinking, educate about what I'm learning, empower so that I can think for myself. Get me thinking about what I'm learning so I can think for myself. Society desperately needs us. Our students need us. Get unstuck, free yourself up, and join the revolution. Thank you and enjoy the conference. I have 2 minutes. If there's any questions.
We have the microphone down.
There's a mic or, yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I had the pleasure of working with you actually a number of years ago. Some of us from the staff development department came down. I have a question. Implicit in all that you presented, but not explicit, is sort of the notion of praxis, linking what we think and action.
Yes.
And I'm just curious if that's purposeful or not purposeful, and if you could explain a little bit about as to why. Because the reason I ask the question is, in my mind, empower is when we're actually taking collective action to improve the quality of our lives. So I just want to understand that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a super deep question and a really important one, and it's one that I think a lot of people, there's a lot of science behind how sort of thinking and knowledge and behavior and action are related. But I think what we know, what we're sort of starting to come to realize is that the separation between knowledge or the mental models that we create about the world and behavior is actually not as separate as maybe we used to think they were. We used to think you sort of had a mental model and then you behave. But it turns out that the behavior is simply an extension of the mental model. And so if we change the mental model, the behavior will change. And likewise, if we don't see behavior change, then the mental model hasn't changed. And so what we're learning is that those two things are really much more integral than we previously thought. I hope that kind of gets at what you're asking.
I believe Derek's going to be around all day.
Yeah.
So if there are other questions, we can ask him at a different time.
Great.
And thank you, Derek, for framing the why. After the break, we're going to be moving into more of the how and some very specific examples about how you create thinkers. We have the amazing Diane Levitt who's going to be on shortly, and then I can't wait for you all to meet and hear from Mr. Jim Walker. So we will break now and come back at 10:30. Break now and come back at 10:30 to hear from two outstanding folks. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll have fun telling them about the Miami Vice episode or something where they have like a car phone in a box. It's like, you know, our phones. It's like
light thing working this time? Is the light thing working? Mr. Harris. Come on in, Mr. Harris. Get everyone else to come on in too. All right. One of the best things about this event is the opportunity to connect with friends we haven't seen for a while. It's cool to see our friends from Solvay. Where are you, Solvay? Yeah, right there, Solvay. But Poughkeepsie yelled, y'all just raise your hand. It comes a little different than Solvay to live in Poughkeepsie over there. North Tonawanda, I met some folks from there. It was awesome. Francis Ithaca, we haven't seen it all summer. Thank you, Matt Knight, for joining us. Come on in. Yeah, we can get started now. A few more moments for folks to come on in and settle in. All right. We enjoy an outstanding relationship with Cornell University. Obviously, we're in their backyard. We're the biggest feeder school, from my understanding, and we have a great partnership. All the major initiatives that we have in our district have some indirect or direct connection to Cornell, so we appreciate the partnership. One of the most exciting projects, from my perspective, that's happening in the country right now is what's happening in New York City with New York City Tech. The partnership Cornell has with the city and what they're building there. Derek did an outstanding job this morning of framing the why, and the theory and research. You're going to hear much about the how from the speakers for the rest of the day. I said to someone the other day, every young person should be learning how to code, and every educator should be embedding coding in their curriculum. And they looked at me like I was a little crazy. But I think when you hear from some folks hoping to come to the stage, you're going to understand why it's important. But I'm not going to show pictures today, but I do have a little 4-year-old at home. And she's already engaged in a coding app after having had a conversation with Diane Levitt. And Daddy knows nothing about how to code, but I have a 4-year-old at home now who's teaching what to do. Again, it's a scary world, y'all. And that's why we're here today, is to talk about how to create thinkers, how to empower them, and how to learn from them. And with that, I'm so happy to welcome Miss Diane Levitt to the stage. Welcome, Diane.
Okay, so first I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me? Okay, that's great. So I'm really excited to be here this morning from the New York City campus of Cornell Tech. My sister taught me to read the summer I was 3. That's actually little me. We didn't have money for summer camps, and she was bored, so we played school. But when I got to the 1st grade, I was reading on a 4th grade level, you know, reading for 4 years, and the school sent a note home to my parents, no more reading at home. My teacher said it was too hard to keep me busy. A few months ago, I sat in a principal's office of an all-girls public high school in Queens, eating pizza and talking about the future with 9 students. They wanted to talk to me about careers in technology. 9 earnest, diverse faces looked at me across the table, excited to think about their ideas for education and employment beyond high school. One of them told me she had learned to code from the Hour of Code, and another taught herself Python, a coding language, from YouTube, a video. You might be shaking your head in amazement. at the tech fluency our kids seem to naturally acquire, while we are all struggling to update the operating system on our iPhones. But what I thought when I left that wonderful lunch was not just how remarkable these remarkable kids are. What I thought was what an incredible amount of time we are wasting not getting these students systematized exposure to the tech tools and content that drive the world that we all live in. So wait, you may say, they have iPads and laptops at school, and that is great. And I want to say Ithaca has been in the vanguard of getting 21st century tools into the hands of your kids, and you are to be congratulated. But the T in STEM does not stand for tools. When I was in middle school, we had a one-to-one pencil program. But that pencil did not make me a writer. What made me a writer was learning the vocabulary and syntax of language, reading other people's great writing, writing myself, and having teachers and peers review what I'd read and show me where it worked and where it didn't. Today, we welcome these tech-savvy kids and their less knowledgeable peers by making them power down when they come through our doors. Yes, we give them laptops, we flip instruction, we blend learning, but we almost never give them the keys to the technology kingdom. We don't teach them how the software and hardware they're using work, despite the fact that we know they are very curious. We don't give them the tools to innovate. We don't create the problem-solving pathways that support so much other learning. It's like my first grade teacher. We're essentially telling them to stop learning more than we know, or more than we are ready to teach them. You might say, as a middle school social studies teacher said to me a few weeks ago, what does this have to do with me? It's got nothing to do with my subject matter. It's not in the standards. It's not on the test. Why does it matter? It matters because our students crave relevancy. They know that much of what we are required to teach them may never be useful. By ignoring technology, we miss the opportunity to give them something that will engage them more deeply in school and their education. It matters because computer science is essentially a problem-solving discipline. And learning the skills and strategies that underlie computing will give them a whole new set of tools for learning other subjects too. It matters because that's where the jobs are now, and will be for the foreseeable future. Lots and lots of jobs, and fewer than half the number of trained American students for those jobs. It matters because of equity. Women and minorities are underrepresented in tech majors and jobs. In fact, across the board, women, African Americans, and Latinos are in the tech workforce at about half the rate that they're in the general workforce. Half the rate. That doesn't only mean that half as many are getting these high-paying jobs. It means that the tech industry and all of us are deprived of their voice and their contributions. Why is this? So let's look at the AP-CS test, AP Computer Science data. It's not the only measure of computing in K-12, but it's one measure, and it's easy to get this data. AP-CS is offered by about 10% of high schools in the US. And I want to say Ithaca High School has a really robust computer science course offerings. You are probably in the top 2% of high schools in the country. So this graph is really hard to see, and I apologize for it, but the lines that matter are the one at the top and the one at the bottom. The little thing, you can probably do this. Look, the one at the top is AP US History, and the one at the bottom is AP Computer Science. So in 2012, almost 440,000 kids took the AP US History test, and just under 24,000 took the AP Computer Science test. That's about 5% as many students taking AP CS as taking AP US. And it's about 0.2% of all AP tests taken. I'm not saying there aren't lots of jobs for history majors, or that history is not an important discipline. Actually, understanding history is crucial to understanding the world we live in, but so is understanding computer science. And I know for a fact that there are more employment opportunities for computer science majors. And you may be surprised to learn that there were 3 states in which no girls took the AP computer science test. 8 states in which no Latino students took the AP computer science test, and 11 states in which no African American student took the AP computer science test. And the pass rate for these 3 groups is lower than for white males. One more revealing fact. In New York State, there are 8 teaching certificates for agriculture. There are 4 for home economics, 2 for travel services, 3 for Afrikaans, even 1 for sewing machine repair. There is no teaching certification for computer science in the state of New York. New York's not alone. This is true for most states in the country. But this is a big reason why we have no computer science classes, because we have no computer science teachers. We have teachers who are knowledgeable and know it, but we don't have a training and a hiring mechanism for that. So perhaps we can agree that we need to get our students and ourselves digital ready. Janet Napolitano, president of the University of California system, and the former governor of Arizona and our Homeland Security Secretary, said it very well. Public schools were designed as the great equalizers of our society, the place where all children could have access to educational opportunities to make something of themselves in adulthood. The place where all children could have access to educational opportunities to make something of themselves in adulthood. Like her, and I suspect like you, I believe that we make a promise to children that we're going to get them ready for the world. And today, that world is digital. But what does that really look like for a K-12 teacher? You might fairly say, I think we've got enough on our plates with Common Core, next generation science standards, students with a wide range of needs and abilities, new technology that we've got to learn and master, budget challenges. I get it. I do. I also understand that most of us are not subject matter experts when it comes to technology. For instance, I have my bachelor's degree in women's studies and my master's degree in early childhood education. I started my career as a kindergarten teacher. When I taught a lesson to teachers recently on sorting algorithms, I was definitely way out of my comfort zone. But I believe we can all get to the place where we understand the basics of computing and learn how to get out of our own way by becoming our kids' technology coaches, by changing this part of their education from listening to doing. And we should all understand how computing relates to our discipline, because no matter what you teach, it does. You may know that Cornell Tech is a new campus of Cornell University in New York City, focused on the digital disciplines and the information age. The campus overlays business, computing, and engineering disciplines with the key technology areas of media, health, and the built environment to create a rich, interdisciplinary network of research and graduate education. It also has a core commitment to K-12, which is why, even though I'm working on a graduate school campus, my role is to bridge the university and the campus to the K-12 education system, both in New York City and here in Ithaca. As we speak, we're developing curriculum that I think will help make teachers and students computationally literate. We want you to understand the way software, logic, algorithm, code, and debugging affect your life. We want all your students to see the academic and career paths available to them if they're interested. We think every student is entitled to this literacy. Remember, we don't just teach soccer to kids who are going to play in the World Cup. We don't just teach music to children who are going to Juilliard. We think this is a part of everyone's learning to get them ready to be great citizens in our democracy. So it seems like a huge jump to make a difference, but it doesn't have to be. A few years ago, our students had no regular access to computing education, but things are changing. Last year, Code.org and others launched the Hour of Code during Computer Science Education Week. Perhaps you heard about it or participated in it on your own or with your students. The Hour of Code is an opportunity for everyone to learn computer science for an hour. There are lots of resources online that made this possible without computer science teachers. Almost 40 million people participated. The original videos launching the Hour of Code were deliberately timed to coincide with when high school students were enrolling in classes to try to drive more computer science enrollment. The College Board just released preliminary data on AP Computer Science tests for 2014. AP Computer Science is now the fastest growing AP course in the country. 1/3 more students took the test this year in 2014 than in 2013. 1/3 more students. The representation of female and African American students rose 8%. The representation of Latino students rose 10%. The numbers still do not reflect our population, and we have lots of work to do. But now we know that even this modest effort, 1 hour, can make a huge difference. I want you all to be part of this revolution where we redesign the T in STEM. I hope all teachers and students in this region participate this year in the Hour of Code, which is in the middle of December, and then go on to look for other ways to build computational literacy, because coding is really just a piece of curriculum, of computing. You know, coding is really just the language we use to tell the computer what we want it to do. Try an online class at the Khan Academy, Code.org, or Code Academy. Cornell Tech will be providing the curriculum we are developing to the Ithaca City schools and others in this area at the same time we deliver it in New York City. I want you to reach out directly to me if you want something more or something sooner. Whatever you do, whoever you teach, I want you to urge your students, all your students, to believe they can and should know more than you do about the digital world, and to be their coaches and mentors and their cheerleaders on this journey. Thanks very much. Absolutely, we got lots of time for questions, I think. So. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean lots of time. I meant just a very short amount. But I'm really happy to answer questions if anybody has. I will not be around for lunch. So, yes. But I'm really easy to find, and I hope that you will reach out to me.
All right, thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
Well, thank you, Diane. All right. I can tell you what, I've been dreaming about the opportunity to welcome Jim Warford to our stage. Not yet, Jim. I want to tell a story about you. I was introduced to Jim a few years ago, and I called my mama. And folks in from Michigan know I talk about my mama all the time. She's a mama because I'm from Virginia. And I called her, and I said, I'm not the type of educator I want to be when I get a little older. And for the folks who know, have heard about my mom, she was in the classroom for 44 years, and she retired. And I mean, she really retired. She's right now drinking tea with her feet up, and she's not doing nothing. She's enjoying retirement. And I learned, Jim, you and her are the same age. And she says to me all the time, and she sees her grandkids, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I'm handing this over to the folks who have the fire to change their practices and to meet the needs of young people that I don't know how to talk to. She said that to me as the most respected educator in our community. So she said, what kind of educator are you going to be? And I said, I met the guy I want to be like when I'm your age. He's on fire. He's short and he's bald, just like me too. I said, Mama, he's white. That's the only difference between us. But he's on fire. He's done it all. He's been the chancellor, the first chancellor of education in Florida Public Schools, has been superintendent, has been the executive director for Florida State School Administrators, and now he's all over the country inspiring folks around how to meet the needs of our contemporary learners. So I'm excited about having him with us today, and he's going to take us into lunch, but he's going to inspire you when he does so. Jim, welcome. Come on up.
Hello? Hello. I'm Jim Warford, and wow, after that introduction, I think I should just sit down. We're gonna switch out my computer so that I can use the technology, and I'm gonna move around because I may be more HD than you are. HD, I cannot sit still. I knew that early on before we had all those alphabet, and designations. I just knew. And my teachers knew I was a pain, and most days working on their last nerve. I was bored frequently in school, but I want to tell you, 30 years ago, I was thinking about this morning. 30 years ago, next week, I was a new teacher at Vanguard High School in Ocala, Florida. And I'd been there a couple of years. I was hired to teach drama. I had an English degree, but my original degree was in theater communication. I don't know that Louisville knows this about me, but I was changing careers. I was a professional musician at the time, performer. I'd been a songwriter in Nashville. I may be the only superintendent Louisville knows that is a published songwriter. I put myself through school playing music. I was born on the edges of Appalachia, in real poverty. I was born in a house that didn't have running water or electricity. In a part of Kentucky where, Cornell, this community, you can appreciate this, the gene pool there was a tad shallow. Those jokes have a basis in reality. But very musical, so I don't remember a time when I didn't play anything with strings on it. And I continued to do that until I was about 30 years old. My second child was born in a hotel. My wife said, well, it's time to make that change you've always dreamed of, because I had always wanted to teach. So I walked into my principal's office. I had been teaching drama in a school that didn't have a stage, didn't have a theater, didn't have really a strong interest in one. And for the last 2 years, I had been writing all these grants. Because at that time, there was all this Carl Perkins money on the CTE side for the big technology of the day, analog video. This was pre-computer. This was before computers and video got made. You know. News, Film at 11. Some of you remember the TV shows. And I had been very good at those grants, and I had piles of equipment, big opportunity. I went to my principal, and I said, Ken Vianello, I love him to this day, and I stay in touch. I said, I've got an idea. I said, I've been using all this stuff in my class, and I can't keep my kids away from it. They will do anything. They get their hands on it. They want to do stuff. They want to make stuff. I said, I've got all these ideas. And I said, I think we could create a television production class. And I said, I guarantee you, we can do amazing things. And Ken looked at me and he said, well,
Where does that class live in the official course core directory identified by the state to approve courses? And I got real quiet and I looked at him because I'd done my homework and I said, well, it doesn't. There is no such course. And I loved Ken because he looked at me and he said, Jim, you really think this will be good for kids? And you can teach things that will be useful? I said, yes. And he said, then what could we call this course? So for the first several years, we called it Research and Media. And it was in the library section of the course code directory. Eventually, I helped write the standards in the state of Florida, and we created a course, and now it's common all across the country, but this was 30 years ago. And he said, well, what do you know about technology? And I said, well, not much. I said, but I have this other idea, you see. Kids, it's in their genes. I said, I know what to do with it. I know about reading, I know about writing, I know about even some communication and journalism skills. And I said, so I'll teach them that. And I'll let them teach me the technology. So already I'd broken all kinds of rules, but I was a young teacher, didn't know any different. And what I want to leave with you is, when I work with young teachers, one of the first things I tell them, and I do a lot of mentoring and leadership coaching with principals, don't be afraid to break the rules, because that's how the new rules get created. And best practice wasn't always so. Somebody had to be doing next practice out there somewhere for best practice to be evolved. So I'm going to try to do some things differently this day, because it's just the way I am. I'm going to talk to you straight, because all I've done is pay attention to people my entire career. My leadership philosophy is that if I've got challenges and problems to solve and things to do and create, and I'm the smartest person in the room, I need to find a better room. So I came to Ithaca today, and Derek and Diane, and I told him this morning, I said, well, I'm sure glad you're here, because, you know, I already know everything I'm coming to speak about. So if I don't learn something from you, which I did, thank you, I will dig deeper. I'm not going to leave here having acquired anything new, but I am. And I'm also just excited because I know the superintendent, and I know the exciting opportunities that are going on in this school, in this district, because of his leadership. And I'm going to have to multitask here for a minute as I get into this. And I didn't, it won't take me but just a second, because I do have some stuff that I want to share with you. And I'm going to break a bunch of rules in doing it. So the first thing is, always acknowledge the 800-pound gorilla in the room, because he's going to stay there anyway. How many of you are disappointed, like me, that Ken Robinson's not here today? Oh, let's go ahead. Let's get it out. I'm disappointed. I followed Derek's work some, but I never had a chance to meet him. So that was great. And I said, Ken Robinson, you know, I'm a fan. I'm like a groupie, but our paths have not crossed. This has been on my calendar with a circle, you know, for months. So yes, I'm disappointed, but he sent a great video. I wanted to applaud after his video. I don't know about you. I thought that was great. Yeah, let's go ahead and applaud now. See, I've believed forever in the power of technology. So before I knew he was going to send the video, I said, well, heck, I texted Lou Bell. I love Lou Bell because I can text him all the time, 24/7. He's right there. He's as wired as I am. I think that device must be tethered to his arm. But I said, well, what if I just like to show a video. If he's not going to be here, I'd like to talk about it. And I said, his ideas need to be here. His voice needs to be in the room. I organized everything I was thinking about based upon creativity, transforming education with technology. That's what we're talking about. And so he said, fine. So I'm going to, in this little talk, I'm going to show you two videos that are longer, another one, but one is a teacher I've been working with for about 5 years, but I thought I would also bring Ken's voice into the room to frame everything. But I wanted to tell you that I've been thinking about the idea of transforming education for a long time. And the reason I'm so excited, as Louvel keeps referring to, is because I believe in the future that's finally here. Teachers are doing things today all across this country. Teachers are reinventing the classroom, and I'm going to show you something. And I'm going to focus on the aspect of technology because I've been into it for a long time. I fell in love with technology as a small boy when the bathroom came indoors. You're laughing. It was a transformational event in my life. Indoor plumbing. That's when I said, so I've been an early adopter ever since that moment. And I still am. Just like you, I get tired sometimes of keeping up. This is something I do every talk. I don't care whether I'm talking to a group of superintendents or classroom teachers in a workshop on technology integration. I use this slide. It's like a ritual. It's a mantra. Please turn your devices on. I love Ithaca because I don't have to do that here. You already have them on. This is a very, very wired and connected district. I kind of gauge the places I go by the presence online, the fact that you had a hashtag, that people were already using it. I've already used it. Otherwise, I'd be turning you on to today's meet, and we'd create a little meeting room, and you could talk to me for the next 6 months if you want to, or follow up, or we could have dialogue. But I'm going to keep going here so that hopefully I won't be a frustrating point between you and lunch, which is always a highlight of our day. So, Sir Ken Robinson. It's really interesting. I think somebody is paying attention because he has the most viewed TED Talks of all time. Now, I don't know about you, but this is Ithaca. I work all over. I'm gonna ask this question. How many of you are fond of TED Talks and look at them regularly? Raise your hands. I don't always get that response. But I thought you might be, and you may have been aware of their power. But they're one of the places I go to, to get inspired, to get new ideas, not just in education but across. So what I'd like to do is show one of Ted's most viewed talks of all time, Ken Robinson, on how schools kill creativity. I'm going to bet that a bunch of people in this room have seen it. But I'm going to also bet that you haven't seen it more than I have seen it. I always find that it is worth watching. I always find when I watch it, I get a new reflection or a new meta-cognition, meta-thinking. I like the way you framed meta-thinking rather than cognition, because cognition sounds so neuroscience-y, but meta-thinking is nice. So I think to frame what I'm going to talk about, because, a lot of people talk about this, but when I really start probing it, especially with superintendents, somebody was telling me this too, Marlon, somebody was just telling me, had the same experience. How many of you have actually watched this? Well, it's on my list. So if you haven't seen it, now you will. If you have seen it, it'll be a good review. It's going to frame what I'm going to try to illustrate in a practical sense. What does what he's talking about look like in a classroom? And how are some of these ideas being carried out? And I think you're going to see the connection between what Ken says and this teacher in Montana, thanks to technology, and we're going to try to have a little time to talk about some of these ideas. I would also want to offer this. When I show this video, I want you to be thinking. I want you to be engaged. I tweeted and I wrote down in my notes, We are never more engaged than when we are thinking. Something Derek said. We are never more engaged than when we are thinking. Because I've been focused on engagement for a long, long time, and I have never, ever put it in that. But that's what I've observed myself. That absolutely lines up with my observations. But I've never phrased it that way. And so I want you to be thinking, because when this video is over, I'm going to give you an opportunity. We have mics here. I want you to think about if there's something in this that really troubles you. Because let's make no mistake about it. Ken's not just talking about tinkering around the edges. He's not just talking about kind of how we could get the next little bump in our state test scores. Ken is talking about a transformation of how we do school. A transformation. And those are the people that excite me. You said something else, Derek, that I say a lot. I tell teachers all the time, especially in communities like this. I say, you're confusing every day compliance with engagement. Because your kids play school really, really well. But see, I've been interviewing kids for 20 years. Some of you learned that's how boring school is, not from your students. But just check me on this. You learned it from talking to your kids. I mean, your kids. My 3 kids are the ones that taught me the most about it, but I've been always talking to kids. So, let's watch Sir Ken, and then when he's done, if you've got something you want to say about this, good or positive or negative, I'm going to give you a chance. So you be thinking about that. Oh, well, we're going to back it up. I never plugged in the mic. Right here. Thank you.
Reforming public education. There are 2 reasons for it.
Okay, let's see if we can start it.
The first one is economic.
I want to do it.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are 2 reasons for it. The first one is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity, and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities, while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which is if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the route to it marginalises most of the things that you think are important about yourself. And so people say you have to raise standards if this is a breakthrough. You know, like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? You know, I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, you know, if you had the money. But public education, paid for from taxation, compulsory to everybody and free at the point of delivery, that was a revolutionary idea. And many people objected to it. They said it's not possible for many street kids, working class children, to benefit from public education. They're incapable of learning to read and write, and why are we spending time on this? So there's also built into it a whole series of assumptions about social structure and capacity. It was driven by an economic imperative of the time, but running right through it was an intellectual model of the mind, which was essentially the Enlightenment view of intelligence. that real intelligence consists in the capacity for a certain type of deductive reasoning and a knowledge of the classics originally, what we come to think of as academic ability. And this is deep in the gene pool of public education. There are really two types of people, academic and non-academic. Smart people and non-smart people. And the consequence of that is that many brilliant people think they're not, because they've been judged against this particular view of the mind. So we have twin pillars, economic and intellectual. And my view is that this model has caused chaos in many people's lives. It's been great for some. There have been people who have benefited wonderfully from it. But most people have not. Instead, they suffered this. This is the modern epidemic, and it's as misplaced and it's as fictitious. This is the plague of ADHD. Now, this is a map of the incidence of ADHD in America, or prescription for ADHD. Don't mistake me here. I don't mean to say there is no such thing as attention deficit disorder. I'm not qualified to say if there is such a thing. I know that a great majority of psychologists and paediatricians think there is such a thing. But it's still a matter of debate. What I do know for a fact is it's not an epidemic. These kids are being medicated as routinely as we have our tonsils taken out, and on the same whimsical basis and for the same reason, medical fashion. Our children are living in the most intensely stimulating period in the history of the earth. They're being besieged with information and calls for their attention from every platform, computers, from iPhones, from advertising audience, from hundreds of television channels. And we're penalising them now for getting distracted. From what? Boring stuff. At school, for the most part. It seems to me not a coincidence totally that the incidence of ADHD has risen in parallel with the growth of standardised testing. Now, these kids are being given Ritalin and Adderall and all manner of things, often quite dangerous drugs, to get them focused and calm them down. But according to this, attention deficit disorder increases as you travel east across the country. People start losing interest in Oklahoma. They can hardly think straight in Arkansas. And by the time they get to Washington, they've lost it completely. And there are separate reasons for that, I believe. It's a fictitious epidemic. If you think of it, the arts, and I don't say this exclusively the arts, I think it's also true of science and of maths, but I say that the arts particularly because they are the victims of this mentality currently, particularly. The arts especially address the idea of aesthetic experience. An aesthetic experience is one in which your senses are operating at their peak, when you're present in the current moment, when you're resonating with the excitement of this thing that you're experiencing, when you're fully alive. An anesthetic is when you shut your senses off and deaden yourself to what's happening. And a lot of these drugs are that. We're getting our children through education by anaesthetizing them. And I think we should be doing the exact opposite. We shouldn't be putting them asleep, we should be waking them up to what they have inside of themselves. But the model we have is this. I believe we have a system of education that is modelled on the interests of industrialism and in the image of it. I'll give you a couple of examples. Schools are still pretty much organised on factory lines, ringing bells, separate facilities, specialised into separate subjects. We still educate children by batches. We put them through the system by age group. Why do we do that? Why is there this assumption that the most important thing kids have in common is how old they are? It's like the most important thing about them is their date of manufacture. Well, I know kids who are much better than other kids at the same age in different disciplines, or at different times of the day, or better in small groups than in large groups, or sometimes they want to be on their own. If you're interested in the model of learning, you don't start from this production line mentality. It's essentially about conformity, and increasingly it's about that as you look at the growth of standardised testing and standardised curricula, and it's about standardisation. I believe we've got to go in the exact opposite direction. That's what I mean about changing the paradigm. There was a great study done recently of divergent thinking, published a couple of years ago. Divergent thinking isn't the same thing as creativity. I define creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. Divergent thinking isn't a synonym, but it's an essential capacity to creativity. It's the ability to see lots of possible answers to a question, lots of possible ways of interpreting a question, to think what Edward de Bono would probably call laterally, to think not just in linear or convergent ways, to see multiple answers, not one. So, I mean, there are tests for this. I mean, one kind of common example would be people might be asked to say, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip? One of those routine questions. Most people might come up with 10 or 15. People who are good at this might come up with 200. And they do that by saying, well, could the paperclip be 200 foot tall and be made out of foam rubber? You know, like, does it have to be a paperclip as we know it, Jim? No. Now, they tested this, and they gave them to 1,500 people. This is in a book called Breakpoint and Beyond. And on the protocol of the test, if you scored above a certain level, you'd be considered to be a genius at divergent thinking. Okay? So my question to you is, what percentage of the people tested, of the 1,500, scored at genius level for divergent thinking? Now you need to know one more thing about them. These were kindergarten children. So what do you think? What percentage at genius level? 80. 80, okay. 98%. Now, the thing about this was it was a longitudinal study. So they retested the same children 5 years later, ages of 8 to 10. What do you think? 15? They retested them again 5 years later, ages 13 to 15. You can see a trend here, can't you? Now, this tells an interesting story, because you could have imagined it going the other way, couldn't you? You start off not being very good, but you get better as you get older. But this shows two things. One is we all have this capacity, and two, it mostly deteriorates. Now, a lot of things have happened to these kids as they've grown up. A lot. But one of the most important things that I'm convinced is that by now they've become educated. You know, they've spent 10 years at school being told there's one answer, it's at the back. And don't look. And don't copy, because that's cheating. I mean, outside schools, that's called collaboration. No, but inside schools. Now, this isn't because teachers want it this way, it's just because it happens that way. It's because it's in the gene pool of education. We have to think differently about human capacity. We have to get over this old conception of academic, non-academic, abstract, theoretical, vocational, and see it for what it is, a myth. Second, we have to recognise that most great learning happens in groups, that collaboration is the stuff of growth. If we atomise people and separate them and judge them separately, we form a kind of disjunction between them and their natural learning environment. And thirdly, it's crucially about the culture of our institutions, the habits of the institution and the habitats that they occupy.
Now, one of the reasons that I'm so excited today, more than I've been for years and years, is because so many of the issues that he raises, I see a potential improvement in the Common Core movement across the country. Although many politicians around our country are doing their very, very best to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory on this issue. Is there anybody that would like to get their voice in the room right now? Because you got a mic up here. If there's something about this that you'd like to respond to, something that you'd like to question, or that you'd like to comment on, please do. Come down, but come down fast. Come on down.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Kristen Herman. I was a long-term sub in ICSD last year. I'm currently unemployed. Hopefully not for long.
That's right.
I am also learning to knit and to play ukulele.
Good.
And when I do those things, I think about, okay, these are things I want to be able to do in my life. I'm passionate about music. I sing really well in the shower. So I want to be able to share that passion. when I think about the two things that I need in order to learn those things, I need time to explore, time to collaborate, and there has to be an emphasis on that collaboration. And there has to be an emphasis on making mistakes and allowing that to play itself out in however it's going to do so. So I feel like when we watch these things, when we watch videos like Sir Ken, or listen to you, or listen to all these great speakers who have so many great ways of thinking about this, you're preaching to the choir. We all know it. Yes, I'm there. Yes, let's change it. But how do we change the structure of the individual classroom? And I think what we need is more time. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think we need to focus the conversation on what a classroom looks like in order for these things to happen.
I agree completely. So I want to try to do that for you in the rest of my session.
Okay,
so thank you for setting that up. But I think you actually need three things. Anytime we want to try to give people new skills or talents, they need training, tools, and time. I call them the 3 T's. And when I start to work with teachers around technology integration, when I start to work with schools and districts, I mean, over and over and over, I see people making the same mistakes. And the same mistake is they buy all this technology and they put it in a school, and they don't invest in the training, the tools, and the times that the teachers need to acquire, you know, the effectiveness in using those tools. What's exciting to me is that I see the opposite happening. Some of the most creative classrooms I'm in, creative classrooms, and I'm going to try to talk a little bit about that. What does it look like with technology? It's all ground up. It's teachers taking what they've got and figuring out how they can do new and different things with it within certain models. So we do have to absolutely find the training tools and time. I think there's still value in getting our thinking lined up like Sir Ken does, or Sir Ken did here. Let me get back on here because my computer's going to shut off because I didn't find the password. I mean, I've got it with me. So I want to get back into this. Anybody else want to comment? The result of all of this technology outside and inside of our schools that Ken is talking about, that's, I think, causing the problem today to be even greater than it's ever been. Today's kids are flat out wired differently. And I've been saying that for 30 years. I've been telling people kids are wired differently. The good news is, it's no longer my opinion. The neuroscience is getting pretty settled on this. Here's an excellent, I'm going to give you a little homework. If you haven't read this book, it's by Dr. Gary Small, Stanford neuroscientist, and a team of brilliant neuroscientists. And they document, and look at the title of this, the subtitle, Surviving the Technological Alteration of the Modern Mind. They argue in this book that not only are kids wired differently today, but the change is taking place in these children faster than at any point in time in our human history. The rate at which this change is occurring is unprecedented in these children. So when I talk to teachers, when I start working with them, I'll say, are you frustrated? They go, yes, we're frustrated, and now I'm more frustrated than I've ever been. And we go through a little frustration kind of venting and owning the frustration session. And then I say, I surprise them, and say, good, good. Glad to hear that. Got that off your chest now? Because let me tell you something. If you're working in public schools today and you're not frustrated, hell, you're not paying attention. You ought to be frustrated. We're asking you to work on a problem. We didn't give you the time, training, or tools. The kids are different. We didn't explain that to you. Now we're changing the standards again. We're asking you to do a Common Core. It's the biggest change in teaching and learning I've seen in my entire career. Oh, we're not going to have a lot of time for that. You should be frustrated. It's the people who've given up frustrated that I'm the most concerned about. But I'm also seeing teachers do really some exciting things with that frustration. Why? Because they recognize this. I want to show you some other research. This is a study down there at the bottom. You can check it out. See, our technology, we know kids are wired differently because today we can take pictures of brains as we do all kinds of things. We've got sensors so small and so portable, we can wire people up and let them walk around and do stuff. And see what's going on inside their head. What the patterns of the cognition actually look like. So here's 7 days, a week in the life of a student. And this has been replicated over and over and over again, but here's their brain activity. Here's their brain activity in the lab. And they get a little thinking going. I suspect we get some thinking going here. Then we get homework, sleep. We got the highest pattern so far. I gotta keep being careful about touching. Class. Class. It's relax. Class. Class. You can find the class without me pointing them out. The traditional model by which our teachers were taught, the traditional model on which they were trained, it didn't work on me 50 years ago. That's why I was working on their last nerve. That's why this work is so important. It certainly does not work with today's digital natives who are wired differently. That book, Gary Small, it's not for educators, it's not by an educator, and it's really not about education. But every teacher ought to read it. There's some good news in there about the potential for our human evolutionary development, and there's some real bad news. The human characteristic of empathy is on the measurable decline. Children's lack of social, emotional skills is becoming evident to the basic classroom teacher. Every group of teachers I debrief with tells me the same thing. They will tell me they'll sit in the classroom and watch kids sit in the same room and text each other, or in a car, or on the bus on the way to the volleyball game. So if we don't teach them to think about thinking, how are we going to begin to get at some of these really important, essential human skills? Empathy. It just happens to be one of those characteristics that keep us human. So when the society figures out this is a real problem in our children, just who do you think they're going to turn to anyway to solve it? So you might as well volunteer now. We are all teachers of digital literacy, whether we want to be or not. Some of us have just embraced it. So, how can we actually engage, educate, and empower these kids? We need a new mental model. I love E3, and I tell people all the time, you know, find the map that works for you, because one of the most important things that we need anytime we start a journey to a new destination is a good map, because without a good map, we won't know how to get there, we could get lost on the way, and we won't know how to get back. And I think that's fundamentally the source of most of the frustration that's going on across the country. And folks, don't just think it's here, because a lot of you responded to my question about frustrating. Everywhere I go, from superintendent groups to teacher groups, everywhere I go, teachers tell me they are more frustrated than they have ever been in their career. We have an epidemic of frustration. So, I think part of the problem, and again, I want to link back to something Derek said, Dr. Cabrera, about the power of mental models. It's been a part of my work for a long, long time. Why is it that somebody in the middle of Israel can get up and strap on a vest full of explosives and walk into a bazaar full of women and children and kill hundreds of people? How does that happen? They have a very faulty mental model. Mental models are the most powerful force in human behavior, in my opinion. You know, we don't see the world as the world is. That's the stuff of saints, poets, mystics. Few people struggle and pay the price to see and touch reality maybe as it might be. Most of us, we see the world as we think it is and as our mental model tells us it is. And you've been studying the relationship between that two. So here's the mental model that I've been using for a long, long time. Don't have time to go into it today, but it's also the work that's grounded a lot of my work with teachers. You know, there's another group of folks down the road from here in Albany, New York. How many of you are familiar with Dr. Bill Daggett? We're the rigor and relevance people. I'm a senior advisor and fellow and consultant and speaker with Dr. Daggett's group, full disclosure. Dr. Daggett created this about 25 years ago, way before the Common Core or any of these. But it's been guiding my work for almost 20 years. 15 years I've been actively trying to work to get it into classrooms and use it in my technology. It's called the Rigor and Relevance Framework. And everywhere I go today, people are talking about rigor and relevance. And I love that Dr. Cabrera was focused on the rigor, how do we extend critical thinking, which is what Bloom's taxonomy did in both the original and the revised, and now Webb's depth of knowledge. But Dr. Daggett took Bloom's taxonomy, because a lot of people don't know this, Dr. Daggett was a student of Dr. Bloom's at the time. And he argued, he was a difficult student like me. He was ADHD and pain in the neck. And he was always pushing back. And he said, you've got application in your knowledge taxonomy, but it's not weighted enough to, what I'm after is what good teaching and learning looks like. So he added the application model or framework down here. From knowledge in one discipline to applying in that discipline to applying in real-world predictable and a real-world unpredictable situations. So a lot of my work is focused on getting teachers to change their mental model of real-world application. And what's the difference between real-world unpredictable and real-world predictable? Well, it just so happens that shows up in the Common Core and in one of the big idea shifts around the Smarter Balanced and the PARCC assessments. The idea now that in the real world, problems have more than one right answer. Doesn't fit our mental model. School is organized exactly the opposite. If it doesn't have one, if the question doesn't have just one right answer, we probably won't deal with it. This leaves these four quadrants. Low level of knowledge, low level or no application, high level of application, low level of critical thinking or rigor, high level of rigor and assimilation and critical thinking and meta thinking, but no application over to the D quadrant. And when I talk with teachers, very quickly they can take this in a matter of a little bit of training. They can put this on a lesson plan and kind of plot out their point, because this is, after all, a matrix. Level 4 and level 4 on application puts me here. Adaptation, creativity, it gives us this. But 80%, 85% of all the classrooms I observe all across the country, from New York to California, from Alaska to the Virgin Islands, I see teachers doing all the work. It's another reason they're frustrated and tired. What are the students doing when the teachers are in the A quadrant? They're showing up to watch them work. That's why it's flatlined on the brain research. Because the students sit in the back of the class and go, whoa, look at Mr. Warren, man, he's working hard this morning. Wow, he's working so hard, he's wearing me out. But, you know, I was working hard at Burger King last night to help my family and get my car. And so I think I'll take a nap because Mr. Warford, he'll be working when I wake up. But that never happens to any of you, I'm sure. It's only me. I had all kinds of techniques to wake them up, but and keep them awake. How do we actually do this? I've been training teachers in this for 15 years. What's exciting today is they've solved the biggest problem, because teachers say, I love this idea of D-quadrant. I love project-based learning. I love inquiry-based learning. I love to get the kids doing that stuff. I just don't have time. Well, the teachers I'm working with, and I'm going to show you, they figured it out. Now, there's all kinds of ways to integrate technology. This is not the only way, but it's the most creative thing that I'm seeing going on all across the country. The flipped classroom. The flipped classroom. So, the flipped classroom teachers have stopped lecturing and captured that time for more application. They've been able to move out of the A quadrant, and I know teachers who live in D. They live there in D every day, all day, because they don't lecture at all anymore. From kindergarten to college, it's going on. Nobody's telling these teachers to, nobody's showing them how. They're just trying to figure out the solutions to some of this problem. Now, I'm going to take a quick little tour of what some of these lectures look like from kindergarten to high school.
Will say his name and put up his big muscle arms and say A.
Kindergarten.
A.
Number 13, hat. The girl wore a big hat.
Distance from 0 to 1 is the same as the distance from 1 to 2. Likewise, it's the same as the distance from 2 to 3, and so on and so on.
Now with those phrases, what we can do is simply say me gusta, and then attach them to the end. So, an example, I can say, picking from that list, me gusta tocar la guitarra, me gusta cantar.
Well, see, you guys had developed this massive bomb that you used on Japan after World War II. And we wanted to be big and bad as well and powerful. So we started to try to create nuclear weapons to rival yours.
What became the big bomb? And of course, we have command economies, in other words for those, planned, centrally planned, command and control, or social.
Welcome, class. Today I will be sharing with you how to make a fruit smoothie. These things are scrumbly-umptious, tasty good.
Because, as you can see, it's fizzing right here. It's producing a gas. It's bubbling over.
Tendons, as you see here, connect muscles to bones. Here you see the gastrocnemius, the calf muscle, being connected to the calcaneus.
Another thing I want to talk about is something boring. When I grew up, I had this idea that a cell was like a bag of jelly and you had stuff like a nucleus inside it and it would essentially float around.
Here in Woodland Park, we're at a higher altitude, so the temperature is actually blowing.
High level of implementation is allowing the students to create the video.
A story, a non-fiction story, written about someone by someone else. And I have an example here. It is my Lady Gaga biography.
And that gives us a molar mass of 44 grams.
Those potato chip bags. Now, compared to what we saw, it's totally full. Foil's a lot of action.
30 years ago, I was flipping my classroom using analog video, trying to figure out how I could take myself out of the equation more. So what teachers have learned, had a great kindergarten teacher at a conference recently talking about what this looks like in a kindergarten class. Think about what kindergarten teachers do mostly. They repeat themselves over and over around basic skills. Letter sounds, colors, names. What these teachers are doing is putting this, they're capturing this in a video, letting the students watch the videos over and over as they need it at their own pace, while they spend more time with helping the students apply those concepts. More activities, more hands-on.
Several things very counterintuitive. I just showed you a whole bunch of videos. But what's really important about the flipped model, what separates the highly effective classes from those that are not, is not the videos. It's what the teachers do with the class time. The big idea here is they're letting technology take some of the repetitive delivery of the content that the students must have. Because let's face it, no matter how long and much and how well and eloquently and in what a beautiful British accent Ken Robinson talks about creativity, students still have to learn to read. They have to learn to read at high levels and write at high levels and communicate orally at high levels if they want to be successful in the 21st century global economy. So they're still going to have to get that content. What these teachers are doing, they're figuring out, is they're letting the technology do the drudgery. The kindergarten teachers are turning the flip charts into technology. It's that simple. What's also counterintuitive is I find relationships, teacher relationships, student-teacher relationships stronger in these classrooms. Rather than the technology creating a barrier or making the learning experience less personal, it's actually far more personal because the students are working at their own pace, at their own rate, and they have much more one-on-one interaction time with both their fellow students in collaborative learning and with their teachers. So as I interview these students over the years, I'm seeing how this is working out. And again, it's a dream that I've had for long and so exciting. The teacher I've worked with the longest, Paul Anderson, Bozeman, Montana, small school in the middle of Montana. A year ago, he was Montana's Teacher of the Year. He was also a runner-up for National Teacher of the Year. Paul, in his flip classrooms, he hasn't lectured for almost 5 years now. He's totally removed the lecture. His classroom is pure quad D all day, pure hands-on applications. The students come in, work collaboratively or individually in teams to work together. Paul has created multiple YouTube channels. He, like Ithaca, pushed his district, and he had a principal that first just said, go ahead, turned him loose to create wiki, blogs, open up YouTube, use all these resources in his classroom. Last year, he got an award from YouTube. He's not Ken Robinson. Most of you never heard of him. He passed 10 million YouTube views of biology lessons. I run across teachers all over the world that are using his work in his class, in their classes. Paul is reinventing the classroom for the 21st century. And he's following the principles that I believe are important. Last year, Paul took it to a whole new level. Paul had been thinking about this for a long time because he's big into gaming theory, and he had incorporated a lot of gaming theory into his classrooms. But last year, he took an environmental science class and created a video game. He turned it into a video game-like experience in the classroom. Would you like to see a little bit of that? Paul is also worth your time, and I thought about this, but he raises lots of profound themes that follow what Ken Robinson was talking about.
Hello, my name is Mr. Anderson, and my classroom is a video game. I can't think of a better way to start the story than Alice falling down the rabbit hole, and she comes upon a bottle, and the bottle says simply, drink it. And so I'm a teacher, so I wanted to try to recreate that. And so what I did is I left my computer in my class, and I had Angry Birds on it, and then I had a card next to it, and it simply said the word play. And then I walked away. But I wanted to see what would happen. And so I left the webcam on, And so I've got a little video of the kids as they come into class. And so would you like to see that?
Yes.
Yeah, as if you have an option. I love how they took turns. And I love Jackson's eyes if you watch him. Yes! Success! And so that look in his eyes, that look of learning and trying something new and failing and trying it again, is something that we aspire to see in the eyes of our kids. And we don't do that. A lot of the time it's glazed over look. And so I wanted to try to apply some of these dynamics into my classroom. So I grew up in the 1980s playing video games, and these video games taught me lessons that I think we could apply in schools today. The first thing I learned is that video games are fun, and school should be fun as well. Unfortunately, most kids wouldn't say their typical day is fun. However, there are elements of school that all students love. They love seeing their friends, and they love learning. Unfortunately, they spend most of the day just passively sitting in front, listening to a teacher lecture. So I think school should be fun. Second thing I learned is that failure is okay. If it takes you 80 times to clear the third elevator stage in Donkey Kong, that's okay. Failure is simply part of the learning process. However, in schools, we tend to stigmatize failure. You don't get to take a quiz over and over and over again until you finally pass it. In fact, failure of individuals, and right now, failure of schools, is highly stigmatized. And so I think we need to send a message that failure is okay. The third thing I learned is the importance of leveling. This could be applied in schools in two ways. When a teacher decides to move at a specific pace, that's okay for some of the students in their class, but some of the students are automatically going to be bored, and some of the students are quickly going to be confused. And so I think that students should be able to move on their own pace through a mastery system where they master a level and then they can move on to the next one. They also should be able to level up, becoming more powerful as they learn new material in the class. I also think that we give the wrong lecture at the beginning of the year. And I used to give this lecture at the beginning of the year. I would say, you all have an A. From this point forward, you will fall precipitously until you eventually land at your final grade. No game would ever be designed this way. And so, one of the great things about being a teacher is that you get summer break. And summer break is great because you get a break from school, but you also can reinvent your class, make it something that has never been before. And so, if you try to do that during the year, if you try to make radical changes, the kids will just simply be confused. But if you change it during the summer, you can make huge, sweeping changes in your class, and the kids will never know what hit them. And so this was my dream. I wanted to reinvent my class as a video game. But I didn't want the kids to just sit in front and watch a video game like Oregon Trail or Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I wanted to take the most compelling elements of gaming and then apply it in the classroom. This took a lot of work. And so I had to create a class. It's called Biohazard 5. It's got a narrator, it's got a narrative. All the kids come together there. I've created about 100 video podcasts that take them through the lecture. And so when they get that point, they can kind of learn. I have all these special activities. So in class, the kids can apply the material that we're learning in the real world. I have a bunch of inquiry labs. This one right here is a photosynthesis lab. You can see my students very riveted. They're studying photosynthesis right on using little chads that we cut out of a leaf. I've developed hundreds of questions, and I have a mastery system where the students can take quizzes over and over and over again until they finally get it. I have a leveling system, so they start with 0 experience points at the beginning of the year. I borrowed this from Lee Sheldon at the University of Indiana. So basically, they come in on day 1. I invented the bottom level as primordial soup because I teach biology. And so they gain experience points and they can move their way up to like Dumbo Octopus and Mountain Gorilla and maybe Grand Master at the end. I also have a leaderboard, so they play with an avatar and they can see how they're doing in the class, how they're doing against everybody else. This is the most popular resource in the class. Kids are constantly logging in to see how they stack up. I also got to pilot a classroom set of iPads, and so kids had an internet-connected device at all times. And so finally, the summer was over, and I stood in front of the class, like this apparently, and I said, "Hello, my name is Mr. Anderson, and my class is a video game. So what I want you to do is grab an iPad. I want you to log into Biohazard 5. I want you to watch a video. I want you to do some reading. I want you to take a quiz, and then I want you to head off into the class." Now, if I would have done this with my students' parents, it would have been the most frustrating day of my life. But the kids grew up with this technology, and the technology today simply works. And so they were headed off on their own. And so my class is a learning classroom. If you were to come in, you would find kids reading, watching videos, applying, doing special activities, trying to solve challenges, working together or working alone. And so it's a really neat, I had a teacher come, and we were just talking about halfway through the class, and he said, "What you've created is like a shop class." Because he was a shop teacher at once, and he said, so as a shop teacher, you teach them some skills, and then the kids can apply that. And so it's like that. I would love to keep telling you about how great it is, how the test scores seem to be going up, and how the kids are learning how to learn independently. But I am a science teacher, and that's not what gets us excited. In science, what gets us excited is discovering something new. And so I want to talk about 3 ways that I failed. Number 1, a conventional classroom is like a school bus where all the students log in, they just get on, and the teacher is like the bus driver, and it drives from point A to point B, and you can make sure that all the students get there. And so what I had done is I had given each of them a brand new car, keys, and I said, "Drive." And so some of them stalled out, and some of them raced ahead, and some of them drove right into a wall. And so I need to give them more scaffolding next year. The next thing I learned is the importance of reading. Kids struggled with reading when you make your class independent. And I should have seen this coming because it's the biggest indicator of success. And I think the reason I didn't see it coming is that I had never stopped talking. Because that's what good teachers do. We read the book, and then we come up with really good examples, and then we present it in a dynamic way, and the kids can just sit there, and then they can learn it. Why would they want to read the book? We read it for them. And so when I force them to read the book, a lot of them struggle, and we've had to work with that. The last thing I learned is that we are not Vulcans. In the most recent Star Trek movie, young Spock sits in a little module, and he's surrounded by computer screens, and the computer keeps throwing questions at him in philosophy and relativity, and that's his school day. He just sits in a little module like that. And so a lot of people think that they can change education by somehow using videos or automating the learning process. That sucks. Who would want to be in a school like that? Kids are coming to school to be social. And so I had to add elements of social learning in my class to make it more compelling. And so this is a TED Talk. And so all good TED Talks always end with a call to action. And so what can you do? And so I think schools need to move from a passive teacher-centered learning environment to an active student-centered learning environment. And that's what I did. I was off to the side now. I was a mentor in the class. So how do we do that? Well, if you're a student, you give feedback to your teachers. Everything I do in my class is a result is a result of feedback I've gotten from my students. And what do you do if you're a parent? You write an email if you want your schools to change. The only emails I get from parents are complaining about their...
It's okay. We're out of time anyway. I'm going to share what Paul says right at the very end of his video. And it's the most important. Remember he started out talking about Alice in the Bottle? Alice in Wonderland? What's in that bottle? What's in that bottle is your passion. So to that young lady that came up and talked about teaching, the first and most important lesson is to find your passion. And bring that passion to school with you every day, regardless of what you're teaching. then you have to be willing to try, fail, learn, and repeat. Do, fail, learn, and repeat. And be willing to embrace your mistakes in all of that process. Everything that you need to find, I will tell you, the resources are out there. Not every teacher is going to be Paul Anderson, nor should they. There's all kinds of different ways to leverage technology to find more time in your classroom. The most valuable time that you have is your time with your students. So how can you begin to shift that basic content acquisition, quadrant A instruction, into a technology environment so that you get more time for the relationships and the collaboration and the meta-thinking that's required to take all students to high levels of critical thought. Now tomorrow I'm going to do a forum. We're going to go deeper into the technology integration. I have a lot of examples I couldn't show you today because I wanted to get, I've never done this before. I've never shown both of all these videos, or these two videos. But I felt like the ideas here were worthy of the level of reflection this group, I know, brings to everything that you do and the learning objective that was set out by the day. So, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, good. And I appreciate the conversation that's happening online right now using the hashtag. It's a great conversation, and we'll continue. So it's almost time for lunch. This afternoon is Sheila Webster. It's going to be outstanding Sheila Daubin, Cal Walker, Community Treasure. So we have quite a treat and a special surprise too is coming this afternoon before we leave today. Lunch will be served in the Ithaca High School cafeteria, and you may follow the signs to that space. If you wish to see the story that has been filmed by a documentarian, it will be shooting at 12:45, I believe, in this room. The book signing will happen around 1 o'clock. So enjoy the next hour and a half. It's beautiful outside. Enjoy it. We'll see you later on this afternoon.
Moriarty just told me she sent you information on the gentleman in the study. No, I don't have it. I've checked everything on Ithaca, and I'm checking as far back as I possibly can. I've got things from our schools, I've got things from another people, I have nothing to do. So if you can send it to me now, then I'll have it, and I'll know that it's in my inbox. Okay.
Those are the things that took out. Okay, I put 6 new on the permit, and they're all bought.
Okay. Now,
You'll be on front two in the
as steps to come to me.
How many do the podium like Did you leave the mic on or off?
I just turned this off.
Okay, so we'll turn it back on, so it's on.
Because that has to be reset on the seats. So I just sent the letter to the board. Print that out. To Dr. Branson in his hand, highlight it and say D7 by 7, and I'm moving on top of it. I still don't have a receipt or nothing. I just want to get those documents.
I want to hear it.
Okay, must go into
Yeah.
it's midnight.
She's got a big one. So, big voice. Okay. Yeah, this one, I realize that it's a dude and then gets bigger and bigger.
We're going to directly across.
Yeah. So we're going to run the whole song.
You got 2 more dead ones?
Tenía algo. Pero estaba tranquilo. Okay. So see if this guy can send this out. D-Subs and SF must be done, must be signed off. We're going to hit the send button tomorrow when we get it. It's minions that we need to have those documents done. Okay? So mira, fíjate, tiene que leer esa cartita que yo mandé. Hay una parte allá que dice, tiene que repasar eso para ver
He just walked it that way. I'm going to work with Joel. Music. Sound check it all. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
No, thank you. What I do.
Make sure you get lunch.
I will when I'm done here. Thank you.
Okay, ese, con ese card, Tony debe hacerlo porque hay una resolución de la Junta de Educación que tiene toda la información sobre este tema. So, hay una tarjeta de PEP y ella no te seguro cuándo nosotros hicimos eso. En julio o julio, sí. ¿Sabe cuándo? Ok, si puede chequear eso, bueno, porque yo quisiera mandar eso a Tony, so mándame eso si puede chequearlo y después yo voy a mandarlo porque yo quisiera hacer eso en una manera positiva, pero yo quisiera saber que hay una posibilidad. ¿Ok? So mándame esa resolución, por favor. Gracias. me just get. Can you give her just a message, just let her know I just sent an email for Ms. Gent and for Ms. Wright. Can she follow up on both for me, Ms. Gent and Ms. Wright, because I told her I was going to send them. And thanks so much, I appreciate it. Okay. Bye-bye.
No, everyone else was in front of the podium for their entire lecture.
Okay, sounds good.
So, actually, I think you could get nice and loud with this at the moment right now. Fine, I just need to look at this as long as you're doing it. And get the volume on this.
You want me to actually sing home? Okay.
I think it would not hurt us to go through it if you don't mind.
Okay.
I need to show you how to hook the music up to set a level for it.
Okay. Okay.
So if you're listening, God, please don't make it hard to identify the things we see.
So, should we just see if the podium mic is fine that way too? Yeah, and then we wouldn't have to switch it.
So, and then if you want to hold it, just slide the podium microphone right out and stand. That would save us the light.
What's the gist of your speech, Joel?
It's just pretty much going through my history with music. Like I start off, I tell about like the first show I was in when I was 6, and I was Dorothy in the River Bells. Then I go on to tell about how I did show at the Kitchen Theater, and then how I met Jesse Bush and how he influenced me and stuff.
Great. That's what I love to hear.
Okay, let's try to hear you.
So if you're listening, God, please don't make it hard to identify the things we see.
So, Steve,
unless you want to try music with.
Yeah, well, I think you want to do it. That's fine. We can run up there. You'll need this cord. It'll probably be plugged into a laptop.
Okay.
So you pull it out and slide this into your phone.
Oh, so she'll start her own song.
Yeah.
Do you feel good with that?
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
21st century child.
Well, that way you can start it when you're ready, instead of us trying to figure out when you're ready.
Got it. This is like the hardest case to get off.
No, mine's, I'd show you mine and be like, oh, that was easy.
All right, so Alan's ready whenever you are. We'll just settle level and everything.
Do you know, does the volume of the music get louder in the accompaniment tape, or is it stay pretty standard? Because I know it gets big by the end.
It gets bigger by the end. I wouldn't say it gets a lot louder.
So no, it sounds pretty
It's mostly
consistent.
me that's going to be getting louder.
We'll find out.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Oh, I know this arrangement.
All right. Does it keep changing? Does it keep turning off?
What's that?
Does it keep turning off?
Something down there is turning off. I haven't heard anything of it.
It does keep turning off. Why are you doing that song? That's bad. Don't do that. Okay. 1 minute. I got you. Okay. Hopefully I just fix it.
Go ahead and try it.
Being slow. Okay.
Changed in space, but I still know where I'm going. I have had my mind spun around in space, but I'm still watch it growing. And if you're listening, God, please don't make it hard to identify the things we see. Tell us, should we run away? Should we try and stay, or would it be better just to let things be? Living here in this brand new world might be a fantasy, but
that last section, I would pump up the orchestration a little bit because she's getting pretty big and she needs a little bit more support there. Okay. And then make sure you stop it.
Forgot to do that.
There's what? Too much pressure?
I had a lot of compression on that channel in case of stuff off the computers getting really hot for some reason, so that was compressing the music when you got louder. So.
Okay.
So I would just take the levels down.
You want to try it again? You good?
I'm good. I just needed, there's that one section always gets me.
That's fine.
So,
Can you come out more once you feel comfortable away from whatever?
yeah, during that one, I should be good. I should be I'll probably be out here when
Yeah,
I
take a nice center view because
So-
most of the people are sitting right here anyway instead of
Yeah.
getting stuck back there.
Yeah, I definitely will. I just wanted to make sure I got what I needed to fix.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll see you. Be probably backstage by 5 to 3. You know, it may take a while. Dr. Brown will want to know you're back there.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Actually, let's you and I walk back and talk to Dr. Brown and see exactly how he wants to do the process.
Okay. Sounds good. Put this back in the nightstand. There you go.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome. See if we can find a bike for lunch. We got like 15 minutes before we can back. Yeah.
need a low table for people to put their laptops on, Steve, when they're charging them.
Yeah.